Prime Minister Justin Trudeau pays a visit to Thunder Bay for the first time since 2019. Good evening and thank you for joining us. The Prime Minister made a significant housing announcement during his trip to our city.
Justin Trudeau confirmed nearly $21 million to support 600 housing builds in Thunder Bay. Vasilios Bellos was at today's news conference, and Vasilios, the funding is actually much less than what Thunder Bay applied for.
That's right, Riley. The money comes from the $4 billion Housing Accelerator Fund, with Thunder Bay recently submitting an application for $45 million. Despite receiving less than half of that amount, Mayor Ken Boshkov is confident this funding will go a long way to addressing the local housing crisis. A visit from the leader of our nation.
It's an incredible pleasure to be back here in Thunder Bay.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau made the trip to the city for the first time in 4.5 years. The Liberal leader was in Thunder Bay announcing $20.7 million through the Federal Housing Accelerator Fund. It happened at Smart Modular Canada and is an effort to tackle the housing shortage in the city.
We have solved housing challenges before in this country. And right now, including in places like this, with the support of federal investment, we're doing it again.
The $20.7 million is far less than what Thunder Bay applied for. Back in November, the city announced its application for more than $45 million through the Housing Accelerator Fund, with a target of building 2,200 new homes in 3 years. This funding announced by Trudeau on Thursday is expected to fast-track 600 of those homes during that same time span.
Often people are hugely ambitious around what they're going to be able to deliver. Our focus is what concretely can be done, especially in the coming years where the pressure is so much. And the $20 million was the number that we came to as being a realistic, responsible way to be able to meet the need, meet the ambition.
We can surrender and complain to the federal or provincial government, but we won't.
Mayor Ken Boshkov was hopeful the city could get the full $45 million it applied for, but says the funding announced will still go a long way in addressing the housing crisis. Boshkov goes on to mention that he believes if the municipality uses these dollars well, more support could be provided in the future.
The fact that we will have money to get these projects lifted and underway, I would still think that we can stay ambitious. If we prove ourselves, we'll be recognized for it, and justifiably continued funding will prevail.
Vasilios Bellos, TBT News.
Also during today's news conference, the Prime Minister was questioned about federal funding for a proposed long-term care home in Fort William First Nation. The community had a $25 million funding application turned down by Ottawa in 2022. That rejection put a halt to the planned 96-bed facility that would accommodate aging members from Fort William and a number of other communities in the region. Chief Michelle Solomon says the facility is desperately needed for their elders.
How wonderful it would be to be in a long-term care facility that was First Nation specific and had, very relevant cultural aspects to it, which doesn't really exist in the long-term care facilities that exist now.
I know we are working on it. There are a number of active discussions ongoing. It's the kind of things that we've been partnering on in different parts of the country, and we're continuing to understand how important it is to be there in terms of long-term care.
Chief Solomon praised local Liberal MP Marcus Pulowski for being a strong advocate for the long-term care home in her community.
MPP Sol Mamakwa is calling out the Ford government for failing to send any cabinet ministers to an emergency meeting last month on high suicide rates in Nan Territory. Anishinaabe Aski Nation hosted the meeting in Ottawa in late January, inviting federal and provincial ministers to help address the crisis in mental health, addictions, and suicides. Indigenous Services Minister Patty Hajdu and several other federal ministers were there. Nan also invited Ontario Solicitor General Michael Kersner, Indigenous Services Minister Greg Rickford, and 2 other provincial ministers, but none of them showed.
On January 24, leadership of Anishinaabe Aski Nation held an emergency meeting on mental health and addictions. All levels of government were invited, and the leadership from NAN were very disappointed when no one showed up from none of the Ontario ministers showed up for the meeting. Can this government let the people know why they didn't show up for the emergency meeting?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In subsequent conversations with the Grand Chief of Anishinaabe Nation, we have reaffirmed our commitment in a couple of important categories to address the mental health crisis, both in isolated communities and as well for students attending high school in Thunder Bay. Those resources, Mr. Speaker, focus on Nan Hope, a program ran by Kiwetnek Okimakanak, an organization widely accepted and thought of as the right organization to deliver services to students on reserve and transitioning to the big city, Mr. Speaker, as well as mental health resources on the ground in Thunder Bay.
I would like to thank the government for that funding, but it was peanuts.
Anishinaabe police have arrested a teacher in an ongoing probe into the sexual assault of a Webequie First Nation youth. 33-year-old Mohammed Sabhi is from the Greater Toronto area. He's been charged with sexual assault of a person under 16 and sexual exploitation. He appeared in bail court today and was released with a future appearance date. Sabhi no longer lives in Webequie. That investigation continues.
The Premier remains in the hot seat today, despite being away from Queen's Park.
The opposition continues to demand answers over the appointment of former Ford staffers onto a panel that chooses Ontario's judges. CTV's Siobhan Morris reports.
With the Premier away from Queen's Park, the tone a little calmer. But the opposition is still pushing for answers on the appointment of two of Doug Ford's former staffers to a panel that picks judges.
How will appointing a handgun lobbyist to the Judicial Appointments Committee help reduce gun crime?
The Attorney General didn't deal with the fundamentals of the question, attacking the NDP instead.
They think they should have social workers in place of police across the board, Mr. Speaker. That just happens to not be our view. We want our communities safe.
Stiles points out one of the appointees registered as a lobbyist after he was picked for the judicial panel.
Judges are not meant to be like-minded with any political party, and they're not meant to be appointed in the interests of private companies seeking to do business with the government.
But Downey insists the system works well.
There are good people, smart people, people who are looking for individuals that understand victims' issues, individuals that understand cultural perspectives, individuals that understand community service.
Advocacy group Democracy Watch is planning a lawsuit over all this. They argue the Premier saying he wouldn't appoint Liberals or New Democrats to that panel violates the constitutionally guaranteed independence of the courts. Siobhan Morris, CTV News.
Cat Lake First Nation has managed to stop the construction of an access road to a mining site in its traditional territory, at least for now. Lawyers for Cat Lake, the MNRF, and First Mining Gold met at a hearing last week where the judge issued an interim order to halt the ministry's approval of the road. First Mining has been working to create an open-pit gold mine at Spring Pole Lake, about 50 kilometers southwest of Cat Lake. First Mining has been using an ice road to bring supplies to its work camp, but in recent years there have been several incidents of vehicles breaking through the ice, leading to safety concerns. The new 18-kilometer road would connect to an existing forestry road. The MNRF issued a construction permit on February 9th, prompting Cat Lake to take legal action. The CEO of First Mining says it's disappointing that the First Nation has chosen to oppose the move to improve safety. The roadwork is now on hold until the legal challenge is fully heard in court.
Dryden Fire Service was called to a blaze at an apartment complex in that community last night. Fire crews were called in around 7:30 and evacuated one occupant from the affected unit. That person was transported to Dryden Hospital. The fire was contained to the one apartment unit, keeping damage to a minimum. The cause of the blaze is still under investigation.
Applause Productions is back this weekend with its latest musical starring local youth. Newsies Jr. is set to entertain audiences at Trinity Hall tomorrow and Saturday. This afternoon, the Newsies cast ran through scenes from the production to hone their skills and make final adjustments before the show opens to the public tomorrow. The musical features 40 youth ranging from 8 to 16 years old. It promotes unity and the idea of looking out for those closest to you. The show's directors, as well as some of the young actors, shared some insight into the play.
The musical is set in 1899 in New York City, and this is where the newsboys and the newsies in general strike against the rising price upgrade of the newspapers. And ultimately they form a union, and you see a lot of unity and justice come to life.
My favorite part is the message that it brings. It really delivers the message it's right to fight for what you believe in, no matter how bad things can seem.
My favorite part about the play easily is just how fun all of it is. You just get to hang out with a bunch of people, you get to dance, you get to sing, you get to act. It's honestly probably the best I could have asked for.
The public can catch the production at Trinity Hall on Friday night at 7 o'clock and on Saturday with 2 showings at 2 and 7 p.m.
A local school bus went off the road and ended up in a ditch this morning on the outskirts of Thunder Bay, but fortunately, no one was hurt. According to an eyewitness on the scene, it happened on Mud Lake Road, and there were no children on the bus at the time. The witness says the driver had stopped on a hill and got out to check something on the bus, but that's when the parking brake apparently failed and the bus rolled backwards into the ditch. A tow truck was required to pull the bus back onto the roadway.
Okay, fortunately, nobody was hurt in that incident. Yeah, it could have been a lot worse. Let's turn our attention to the weather now, Fiona. It was another cold start to the day today, but things did seem to warm up a little bit out there as the day went on.
Yes, last night across the region, it was very cold. Temperatures well below normal for this time of year, and wind chills made it feel even colder still. Here in the city of Thunder Bay, we had a low of -23, wind chills of -29, and today, although it was mostly cloudy, we did warm up to -11, so about 1 degree warmer than yesterday, but at least we're heading in the right direction. Wind chills were still hovering around -17, and the winds were relatively light to moderate range, I'd say. We started out from the southwest in the morning, about 10 kilometers per hour, and by afternoon we were coming from the east at 15 kilometers per hour. But as I said, last night was very cold. And let's talk about last night's conditions. Wind chills in Fort Frances all the way through up into Greenstone were in the mid-30s last night. Red Lake saw the wind chill hit -41. At this hour, we're starting to see a little bit of a warm up moving in from the southwest portion of the region. So Fort Frances is starting to warm up. They have had a lot of cloud. They're currently at -10 and a wind chill of -17. So you head up into Red Lake where they saw that -41 wind chill. Right now, it feels closer to -24 with the wind chill, but they've had a lot of snow and drifting snow throughout the day. Greenstone has had nothing but sunshine all day, so that at least they've got that going for them. But again, throughout this area into Armstrong and Sioux Lookout, wind chills are sitting around -23. And then down into Sault Ste. Marie, they had snow showers all last night and all day today until about 4 o'clock this afternoon. It's just started to taper off. They're currently at -8 and a wind chill of -14. But the real warm-up is going to come from the southwest, and specifically from Minnesota starting tonight. And things are going to warm up very quickly, and I'll have more details on how that's going to come about, but it may surprise some people when they wake up in the morning.
Okay, well, we look forward to that. Thanks a lot, Fiona. All right, turning our attention to national news now. Legislation was introduced today, bringing the country a step closer to a national pharmacare system. We'll have details on that and more as your Thursday News Hour continues after the break.
This is the dream of our party since the conception of our party.